Hey everyone, I noticed a lot of you who are watching and enjoying the content aren't subscribed yet. If you love spine-chilling stories, creepy encounters, and unexplained mysteries, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you never miss out on the next terrifying upload. It really helps the channel grow and lets me keep bringing you more of the content you love. I've been working the night shift at Walmart for a few months now. It's not the most exciting job, but it pays the bills. Most nights are pretty quiet, just a handful of customers coming in for late-night snacks or forgotten essentials. But lately, things have been different. It started about 3 weeks ago. This old lady started coming in regularly, always after midnight. At first, I didn't think much of it. People have their routines, right? But then I noticed her purchases. Every single time, without fail, she'd buy the same things: bleach, tarps, and heavy-duty rope. Not your typical grocery list. I tried to brush it off, tell myself it was nothing. Maybe she was just stocking up for some big cleaning project. But something about her gave me the creeps. She never smiled, never made small talk, just silently placed her items on the conveyor belt and paid in cash. As the weeks went on, I started noticing weird things happening in the store whenever she showed up. The lights would flicker, like something out of a horror movie. Sometimes a cold draft would suddenly blow through the aisles, even though all the doors were closed. And once, I swear the entire store went dead silent the moment she walked in. No background music, no beeping from the registers, nothing. I mentioned it to my coworkers, but they just laughed it off, said I was watching too many scary movies. Maybe they were right. Maybe I was just being paranoid. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something was seriously wrong. Last night, things took a turn for the worse. The old lady came in as usual, right around 2 a.m. As I was ringing up her items, I noticed her staring at me. Not just looking, but really staring, like she was trying to memorize every detail of my face. It made my skin crawl. After she left, I couldn't stop thinking about it. I knew I should just let it go, but curiosity got the better of me. When my shift ended at 3, I decided to follow her. I know, not the smartest move, but I had to know what was going on. I saw her car in the parking lot and quietly made my way over. As I got closer, I noticed something strange. The back seat was covered in papers. At first, I thought they were just old newspapers or something. But then I got a better look, and my blood ran cold. They were missing persons flyers. Dozens of them, maybe even hundreds, scattered all over the back seat. Each one had a different face, but they all had something in common. They all looked kind of like me. Same hair color, similar facial features. It was like looking at a bunch of distant relatives. I backed away from the car, my heart pounding. What the hell was going on? Was this woman some kind of serial killer? And why did all her victims look like me? I ran back to my car and got the hell out of there. I didn't sleep at all that night. Kept thinking I heard noises outside my apartment. Kept seeing that old lady's face every time I closed my eyes. I called in sick to work today. Couldn't bring myself to go back there. I'm not sure what to do now. Should I go to the police? Would they even believe me? I don't have any real evidence, just a creepy feeling and a glimpse of some flyers in a car. Part of me wants to just quit my job and never set foot in that Walmart again. But another part of me feels like I need to figure out what's going on. What if that old lady is really hurting people? What if I'm next? I've been Googling missing persons cases in the area, trying to see if any match the flyers I saw. So far, nothing. But that doesn't mean much. People go missing all the time without making the news. I'm thinking about going back tonight, maybe trying to get a picture of the old lady or her car. But every time I consider it, I get this sick feeling in my stomach. What if she catches me? What if those weird things that happen in the store aren't just coincidences? I keep telling myself I'm overreacting, that there's probably a perfectly normal explanation for everything. Maybe she's part of some missing persons organization. Maybe the flyers are for an art project or something. But deep down, I know that's not true. There's something sinister going on, and somehow I've gotten caught up in it. For now, I'm just sitting in my apartment, jumping at every little noise. I've triple-checked all the locks, closed all the curtains. I know I can't hide forever, though. Sooner or later, I'm going to have to face this. I'm not sure what my next move should be. Part of me wants to pack up and leave town, start fresh somewhere else. But would that even help? If this woman is as dangerous as I think she is, who's to say she wouldn't follow me? I've thought about reaching out to some of my coworkers, seeing if anyone else has noticed anything strange. But I'm afraid they'll just think I'm crazy. And what if one of them is in on it somehow? I know that sounds paranoid, but at this point, I don't know who I can trust. For now, I guess I'll just try to gather more information. Maybe I'll stake out the Walmart parking lot, see if I can spot the old lady's car again. If I can get a license plate number, that might be enough to take to the police. Whatever happens, I know I can't just ignore this. Too many people might be in danger, and as scared as I am, I can't shake the feeling that I'm meant to stop this somehow. I just hope I figure out how before it's too late. A week later, I finally worked up the courage to go back to Walmart. I needed answers, even if it meant putting myself at risk. I parked far from the entrance and waited, watching for the old lady's car. Hours passed, nothing. I was about to give up when I saw her pull in. My heart raced as I watched her get out, carrying her usual shopping bags. But something was off. She looked different, younger somehow. As she walked under a streetlight, I gasped. It wasn't the old lady at all. It was a young woman wearing an incredibly realistic mask and wig. She must have spotted me because she suddenly took off running. Without thinking, I chased after her. She led me to a back alley where, to my shock, I found a group of people removing similar disguises. They looked terrified when they saw me. Turns out they were part of an underground network helping domestic abuse victims disappear. The missing persons were actually survivors starting new lives. The weird purchases and flyers were part of their cover. They begged me to keep their secret. After hearing their stories, how could I not? I promised to stay quiet and even offered to help if they ever needed it. Looking back, I feel silly for letting my imagination run wild. But I guess sometimes the truth is stranger than fiction. These days, when I see the old lady at Walmart, I just smile and ring up her items. Some secrets are worth keeping. I'd been a janitor at Walmart for about 3 years, and I thought I knew every nook and cranny of the place. Boy, was I wrong. I was doing my usual rounds, mopping up spills and restocking paper towels in the bathrooms. Nothing out of the ordinary. Then my supervisor radioed me about a leak in the stockroom. I grabbed my mop and headed back there. The stockroom was a mess, as usual. Boxes piled high, pallets scattered around. I found the leak easily enough, just a busted pipe dripping onto some cardboard boxes. As I was cleaning it up, I noticed something weird. There was a door I'd never seen before, tucked away behind some shelves. Now, I'm not usually the curious type, but this was different. I'd been in that stockroom 1,000 times and I'd never seen that door. I pushed aside some boxes to get a better look. It was old, made of metal, with a rusty handle. No lock, though. I hesitated for a second. Should I open it? What if it was just a closet or something? But my gut told me there was more to it. I grabbed the handle and pulled. It creaked open, revealing a set of stairs leading down into darkness. I pulled out my phone and turned on the flashlight. The stairs looked ancient, covered in dust and cobwebs. It was clear no one had been down there in years. Or so I thought. I started down the stairs, my footsteps echoing in the silence. The air got colder and damper as I descended. At the bottom, I found myself in a huge room. It must have been the size of the entire store above. My flashlight beam swept across the space, revealing shelves upon shelves of old merchandise. Stuff from the 80s and 90s, still in their original packaging. It was like a time capsule. As I walked deeper into the room, things started getting weirder. I found a pile of old employee uniforms covered in dust. They looked different from the ones we wear now, older style. But that wasn't the strangest part. Some of them had weird stains on them. Dark stains. I didn't want to think about what they might be. I kept exploring, my heart racing. In one corner, I found a bunch of broken toys. Not just normal wear and tear, but like someone had smashed them on purpose. Dolls with missing eyes, action figures with limbs torn off. It was creepy as hell. That's when I noticed the walls. At first I thought it was just graffiti or something. But as I looked closer, I realized it was some kind of counting system. Tally marks, thousands of them, covering the walls. And they weren't old. Some of them looked fresh, like they'd been made recently. I felt a chill run down my spine. Someone had been down here, and not long ago. I started to panic, thinking about all those horror movies where the protagonist stumbles upon some secret lair. This felt way too similar. I was about to bolt when something caught my eye. In the far corner of the room, there was a makeshift living area. A ratty old mattress, some canned food, even a bucket that I guessed was being used as a toilet. Someone was living down here. That's when I heard it. A scratching sound, coming from somewhere in the darkness. I froze, my heart pounding in my chest. The sound got louder, closer. I didn't stick around to find out what it was. I ran back to the stairs, taking them two at a time. I burst through the door into the stockroom, slamming it shut behind me. I was breathing hard, trying to make sense of what I'd just seen. For a minute, I just stood there, staring at the door. Should I tell someone? Would they even believe me? I thought about the fresh tally marks, the evidence that someone was living down there. What if they came up while the store was open? In the end, I decided to keep quiet, at least for now. I went back to my regular duties, trying to act normal, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. Over the next few days, I kept an eye on that door. I noticed little things. Sometimes it would be slightly ajar when I knew I'd closed it tight. Once I found a weird symbol drawn in the dust on the floor in front of it. I started having nightmares about what was down there. In my dreams, I'd be back in that basement, but this time, I'd see movement in the shadows. I'd hear whispers, feel cold breath on the back of my neck. I'd wake up in a cold sweat, relieved to be in my own bed. A week after I found the basement, things got even weirder. Products started going missing from the shelves. Not the usual shoplifting stuff, but random things. A can of beans here, a pack of batteries there, and always from the night shift, when the store was nearly empty. I knew it had to be connected to the basement, but I still didn't know what to do. I was scared of losing my job if I reported it, and no one believed me. But I was more scared of what might happen if I didn't. Finally, I couldn't take it anymore. I decided to go back down there to try and find some concrete evidence. I waited until my shift was almost over, when the store was at its quietest. I made sure no one was around, then slipped through the door and down the stairs. The basement was just as creepy as I remembered. But this time I noticed something new. The tally marks on the wall had changed. There were more of them now, and they seemed to be arranged in some kind of pattern. I was studying the marks when I heard it. A shuffling sound coming from behind me. I spun around, my flashlight beam cutting through the darkness. For a split second I saw something, a figure hunched over with pale, wrinkled skin. Then it was gone, disappearing into the shadows. I didn't wait around this time. I ran for the stairs, my heart pounding in my ears. As I reached the door, I heard a voice. It was barely a whisper, but I heard it clear as day. It said my name. I burst out of the basement, slamming the door behind me. I didn't stop running until I was out of the store and in my car. As I sat there, trying to catch my breath, I knew one thing for sure. I was never going back to that Walmart again. I quit my job the next day. I tried to tell my supervisor about the basement, but he just looked at me like I was crazy. Maybe I am. But I know what I saw down there, and I know something is living in that basement, something that doesn't want to be found. Sometimes I drive by that Walmart late at night. I always see the lights on, the night shift workers going about their business. And I wonder if they know what's lurking beneath their feet, counting the days in that dark, forgotten basement. I needed to grab a few things before heading home after my evening shift. The store was quiet, with only a handful of customers milling about. I decided to use the self-checkout to avoid any small talk with cashiers. As I started scanning my items, everything seemed normal at first. Bread, milk, some frozen dinners, the usual stuff. But then I noticed something odd on the screen. Instead of the regular prompts, there was a message in red text, "Please help me." I blinked, thinking I must be tired and seeing things. When I looked again, it was gone. I shrugged it off and kept scanning. A few items later, another strange message popped up. "I know what you did." My heart skipped a beat. What was going on? I glanced around, wondering if this was some kind of prank. But no one was paying attention to me. I tried to wave over an employee, but they just nodded and went back to restocking shelves. They probably thought I was having trouble with coupons or something. I considered abandoning my cart and leaving, but I really needed these groceries. As I continued scanning, the messages got weirder and more specific. "Remember that time in high school?" flashed across the screen. My palms started sweating. How could this machine know about my past? I never told anyone about that incident. The next message made my blood run cold. "I can see you through the camera." I looked up and noticed the small security camera above the checkout area for the first time. Was someone watching me? Hacking the system? My mind raced with possibilities, each one more unsettling than the last. I tried to finish up quickly, but the machine wouldn't let me complete my purchase. Every time I tried to pay, an error message would pop up. I was stuck there, feeling more panicked by the second. The messages kept coming, revealing things about my life that I'd never shared with anyone. Secrets I'd buried deep down. Mistakes I'd made years ago. It felt like the machine was inside my head, pulling out my darkest thoughts and displaying them for anyone to see. I looked around frantically, hoping someone would notice my distress, but the few other customers were absorbed in their own shopping, and the employees seemed to be avoiding eye contact. I was alone with this malfunctioning mind-reading machine. As I stood there, paralyzed with fear and indecision, the screen changed again. This time, it simply said, "Stay and finish." I didn't know what that meant, but I knew I didn't want to find out. In a moment of panic, I abandoned my cart and ran out of the store. I could hear confused shouts behind me, probably employees wondering why I was fleeing. But I didn't stop. I ran all the way to my car, fumbled with my keys, and peeled out of the parking lot. The whole drive home, I kept glancing in my rearview mirror, half expecting to see some ominous figure following me. But there was nothing, just empty streets and the occasional passing car. When I finally got home, I locked all the doors and windows. I even put a piece of tape over my laptop camera, just in case. I knew it was probably an overreaction, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. I couldn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw those red messages flashing behind my eyelids. How did that machine know so much about me? Was it really just a glitch, or something more sinister? The next day, I called in sick to work. I couldn't bring myself to leave the house. I kept replaying the events in my mind, trying to make sense of it all. Part of me wanted to go back to that Walmart and demand answers. But a bigger part of me never wanted to set foot in that store again. I spent hours online, searching for any similar experiences. Surely, if this was happening to other people, someone would have posted about it, but I found nothing. Just the usual complaints about long lines and faulty scanners. Nothing about machines that seemed to read minds and reveal secrets. As the days passed, I slowly started to convince myself that it had all been in my head. Maybe I was more sleep-deprived than I realized that night. Maybe I had some kind of mini breakdown from stress. It seemed more plausible than a sentient psychic self-checkout machine. But even as I tried to rationalize it away, a part of me remained on edge. I started doing more of my shopping online, avoiding big stores whenever possible. I became hyper-aware of security cameras everywhere I went, and I never used a self-checkout again. Months later, I finally worked up the courage to go back to that Walmart. I told myself I was being silly, that I needed to face my fears. The store looked the same as always. The self-checkout area was busy with customers, none of whom seemed to be experiencing anything out of the ordinary. I cautiously approached one of the machines, half expecting it to light up with another cryptic message. But it just displayed the normal welcome screen. I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. As I turned to leave, I caught sight of my reflection in the screen. For a split second, I could have sworn I saw red text scrolling across my forehead, but when I blinked, it was gone. I hurried out of the store, my heart pounding. Maybe it had all been in my imagination after all. Or maybe, just maybe, that machine was waiting for me to come back and stay and finish whatever it had started that night. Either way, I decided right then that I'd stick to the regular checkout lanes from now on. Some conveniences just aren't worth the risk. I'd been working at Walmart for about 6 months, and I was used to the routine by now. Clock in, stock shelves, help the occasional customer, and start closing up around midnight. Nothing too exciting, but it paid the bills. That night started like any other. I grabbed my vest from the break room and headed out to the floor. The store was pretty quiet, just a few late-night shoppers picking up essentials or killing time. I nodded to the regulars I recognized and went about my business. As it got closer to closing time, I started my usual rounds, making sure everything was tidy, facing products on the shelves, that sort of thing. Most of the customers had cleared out by then. I was looking forward to locking up and heading home. That's when I saw him for the first time. It was just a glimpse out of the corner of my eye, a man, tall and thin, at the end of the aisle. I turned to get a better look, but he was gone. I shrugged it off and kept working. A few minutes later, I saw him again. This time he was by the electronics section. Again, just for a second before he disappeared. I started to get a weird feeling in my stomach. Something wasn't right. I decided to check the security cameras. Maybe I could figure out who this guy was and what he was up to. But when I looked at the monitors, there was no sign of him, just empty aisles and the last few stragglers making their way to the checkouts. By now it was past midnight, time to start ushering people out and locking up. I made my way through the store, letting customers know we were closing. That's when I saw the man again. He was standing at the far end of the grocery section, just staring. Not at anything in particular, just staring. I called out to him, but he didn't react. I started walking towards him, but as I got closer, he turned and walked away, always staying just far enough ahead that I couldn't quite catch up. This went on for what felt like forever. Every time I thought I had him cornered, he'd slip away. It was like he knew the layout of the store better than I did. And still, he never showed up on the cameras. I was starting to freak out a little. Was I losing my mind? Was this some kind of prank? I couldn't figure it out. Finally, I decided enough was enough. I was going to confront this guy and get him out of the store. I saw him heading towards the back, near the stockroom. I followed, determined to end this weird game of cat and mouse. But when I pushed through the doors to the back area, he was gone. Vanished. I searched everywhere, but there was no trace of him. It was like he'd never been there at all. Shaken, I finished closing up the store. I didn't tell anyone what had happened. Who would believe me? I went home, barely slept, and dragged myself back to work the next evening. That's when things got even weirder. I overheard my manager talking to one of the older employees. They were discussing some kind of incident that had happened years ago before I started working there. Something about a customer who had died in the store. I couldn't catch all the details, but I heard them mention it was the anniversary. My blood ran cold. I gathered up my courage and asked them about it. That's when I learned the truth. Apparently, this wasn't the first time someone had seen the mysterious man. He showed up every year, always on the same night. Always wandering the store, never buying anything, and always disappearing without a trace. The story went that years ago, there had been a bad accident in the store. A shelf had collapsed, and a customer had been killed. It happened late at night when the store was almost empty. By the time anyone found him, it was too late. Ever since then, people claimed to see his ghost. Always on the anniversary of his death. Always just out of reach. I didn't know what to think. I'm not the type to believe in ghosts or anything like that. But I couldn't explain what I'd seen, and the timing. It was too much of a coincidence. From then on, I dreaded that night each year. I'd try to swap shifts, call in sick, anything to avoid being there. But somehow, I always ended up working. And every time, like clockwork, I'd see him, just glimpses, never enough to be sure, but enough to keep me on edge. I still work at that Walmart. Still see him once a year. I've never told anyone else about it. Who would believe me? Sometimes I wonder if I imagined the whole thing, but deep down, I know what I saw. So if you're ever in a Walmart late at night and you see a tall, thin man wandering the aisles, just let him be. He's not there to buy anything. He's just remembering the night he came to Walmart and never left. I don't know if I'll ever get used to it. The waiting, the watching, the uncertainty. But I guess that's part of the job now. Just another thing to deal with, like difficult customers or long shifts. Sometimes I think about quitting, finding a new job somewhere else, somewhere without ghostly visitors. But then I think about that man, alone in the store year after year, and I wonder, if I left, who would remember him? So I stay, I watch, and once a year I share a silent vigil with a customer who never checks out. It's not the job I signed up for, but it's the one I've got. And in a strange way, I've come to accept it. After all, everyone's got their own Walmart horror story. This one just happens to be mine.